Let's do this.
Welcome to another episode Out of the Blank podcast. Look, I know you probably get this all the time, but I'm going to say it because I have corny jokes and I love my corny jokes. Are you a friendly ghost, Kasper?
Hey, I've never heard that before. Can I use that? That's awesome.
You really have never heard that before? Oh my
Of
God.
course, I've heard it before. In fact, I usually get it, surprising enough, in banks is where that happens. It's usually a teller who goes, "Oh, Casper, oh, that's a really funny name. Are you friendly?" And I'm like,
As
"Yeah."
soon as you said that, I pictured like a 37-year-old, like not really a house mom type, but like just one of those that are like, I don't know how to pump my own gas. And you're like, but you're working at a bank.
It's right. It's like, do I want to give you my money? I don't think I do. I'll just keep it in the mattress at home. That's all
Casper,
right.
you have one of my favorite things in the world, and that is called voice acting. It is something I am passionate about.
Well, yeah, you should be. I've checked out some of your podcasts, and they're a hoot. I tell you. I actually,
You sounded like a wise owl. I love that.
no, I love the way that that your topics are so varied. They're very wide. So it's. I was trying to go. Does he have do you have a niche or something? You just grab anything it's that sort of interests you, and you go, let's talk about that for a while.
I'm like the guy on the Titanic that's just looking for a life preserver. I'm like, oh, women and children, you just rip it off of them and hop right in and grasp it, whatever I can
Well,
find.
I haven't always done voice. I've fallen into it, and I'm very happy that I have.
What
So
is
it's been good.
what's the ranges of voices? Because everyone has their own narrative of like a vocal range.
Uh, See, that's really strange because it's one voice is one of these things where we're lucky because you can do stuff and you can't really get discriminated against. But I mean, I did a 15-year-old adolescent who was just sort of cracking, um, which was easier for me to do. Uh, but I mean, I can't do like a 5-year-old Asian girl. That's not my thing, kind of thing. People can usually tell that it's not me. So
Sometimes
it's
I like to watch. I'm just saying.
my voice, my range is, I don't know, just it's anywhere between 25 and 99. The cool thing about VO is you can do it until you can't anymore, really. So and there was a guy in our agency just a little while ago. He's 94 and he was doing voiceover. He came into voiceover this little commercial. He's 94, and that is just the coolest thing, man. I
Is
got the guy, I got his autograph. I went, man, I want to be you. I want
is
to be
his
you.
does he voice like older roles or does he voice like
Well, it was more of I think they got him. I think he's like a farmer or something like that, and they just sort of grabbed him and they said, "Would you mind doing this spot?" And he went, "Yeah, it sounds like fun." And so he came in, and yeah, he's got the old guy voice, but he's 94. Like,
I'm just picturing because like I'm in my 20s, but I can do old people pretty well. Like, can somebody please pass the corn? Is anybody out there hearing me?
you get the thing that a lot of people, I think, don't realize about voiceover is what they want to hear mostly is you. They want to hear your voice. They don't want to hear characters unless you're a character actor. And the ironic thing about character actors is you very rarely hear their voice unless there's a guy, I can't remember his name right now.
People love my Christopher Walken.
That's the thing. Your Christopher Walken is awesome.
Have
Because
you
you
heard
did it
it?
the other. Yeah, you did it. You were doing a couple podcasts ago. You did a Christopher Walken. I mean, the big thing. He's got this new movie coming out. You know
I
the
thought he died, to be honest
you
with you.
know no he's got a movie coming out with Emily Blunt where he's supposed to be an Irish farmer or something like that. My God, it's absolutely horrible. As far as, I mean, Christopher Walken is amazing. He's absolutely amazing as Christopher Walken. Don't tell him to do an Irish accent because it's not going to happen.
You're gonna
You know,
turn him into Liam Neeson.
not even close. Not even close. I mean, his lilt sort of stumbles. The Christopher Walken he's just, yeah, I can't even explain it. You have to watch the trailer. It's The Mountain Time or something like that it's
The
called.
best part about Christopher Walken is that you don't know where he's walking to. That's the thing. All his ideas are like, what are you talking about? You just said that we were going to a grocery store and now you're talking about a pet store. And he's like, I want to buy pets. And you're like,
For for
what?
me, for one of the best things about Christopher Walken was I never knew where he was walking from, because I'm listening to his and I'm going, where where is that from? He's sort of like Cary Grant. They came out. If you watch old movies from like the 30s and 40s, have you
Mhm.
noticed like people talk differently?
Yeah.
That's because they are talking differently. They came up with an accent called the Mid-Atlantic accent, which was made up. Cary Grant, Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, they all took on this sort of kind of part British, part American thing. And that's why those movies sound so different. Like because you're listening to them, you go, nobody talks like that anymore, because they don't. And so Cary Grant, for example, you're listening to him, you're going, where the fuck, where's that from? And it's not from anywhere. It's a made up accent kind of thing. So there was some really cool stuff happening in the in the in the States in the 30s and 40s, where they were just making stuff up, going
there's
stuff.
there's so many things that like we already zigged and we could have zagged. Like the reason why anything that sounds proper in our ears, it would be anything that's from English, such
Yeah.
as things like "Hello, how you do?" Like when a dude comes on for the BBC or something, and they're like, "Here we have a pile of wubble, and during the trash that is piled up on top of this." Anything like that is considered elegant, and we use it for documentaries. And then if you go anything like you say America, people immediately think Southern. And I'm like, I didn't even know I had an accent until like recently someone's like, hey, you're from Baltimore. I'm like, how did you know like the area I'm close? Because the way you say words,
Yeah.
and it's this weird thing that we can live in the same nation and we have accents. Somebody from Boston, give me a pastrami on rye. And you're like, Jesus. And then you hear someone from Jersey, and then they come out like the woman I
Yeah.
told you who's pumping the gas.
Yeah.
I had met a woman at a gas station and she was like, excuse me. And I said, yeah. And she goes, I'm from Jersey. I don't know how to pump my own gas. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know how to pump your own gas? And she goes, it's illegal there. And I'm like, okay.
As it would be, because there's certain states where they have to get an attendant to come out to do it, because you are not trained. Really, you're not. I mean, when you think about it, you're not trained to pump gas,
When
really. Like,
she
you just
said that, I was like, where the fuck do you live? Like, I've been doing that since day one. I've been doing that before I
that's the
could
thing,
drive.
man. I had to be reminded of this just a little while ago, how, like, I'm from Canada myself, but I did a lot of acting when I was in Canada. Like, I lived in Vancouver, and so I was asked a couple times to lose my Canadian. They said, don't be Canadian, eh? Can you drop that? And I'm like, yeah, because you had a lot of stuff like X-Files and all that stuff was coming up, and they wanted you to sound sort of this generic American thing, and whatever that was. It's I would call it over here in the UK, where I am now, they have something called RP, which is received pronunciation. And it's what all the news presenters used to use. The guys, who were doing like the 11 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news, they all spoke with a specific accent that was sort of taught in Oxford and at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Anybody who was doing Shakespeare, they all spoke this one accent. It was called RP. And then in 1974, they allowed what they call a regional accent. It would be like somebody from Jersey going, okay, good evening. This is 11 o'clock news. Here we go. And because that was never allowed in the UK, but in 1974, they said, okay, you want to be regional? Fine. It's what they call a regional accent. There are so many here. So I had to be reminded that the US has a crap ton of accents. The Midwest, you've got the lovely movie like Fargo, where you talk about like the Wisconsin accent and the Milwaukee accent. There's an East Coast accent, there's a West Coast accent, there's a Seattle accent, so
There's a New
it's
York accent.
New York. The thing about New York, and New York's got about 18 different accents, and then they have all the immigrants who come in, who've been there, who may have come over, on the Mayflower or wherever, or they see the Statue of Liberty, they've been there long enough, but they live in like the Irish part of town or this part of town or that part of town, but they're very American. But there's certain words that they will say where you go, where where are you from, kind of thing. And that's usually what gives people away, is not the accent, it's the words they choose. So you'll say something and somebody will go, you're not from around here, are you? You go, why? Because, oh, we don't call it that here.
Yeah, in like Canada, they say Nassau for
Yeah.
NASA. It's like
Yeah.
the A is different. It's like that's so strange though, and it's like it's weird because like for instance, I've been podcasting recently with a lot of people from the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So I when I was messaging people, I was using words I don't use because my brain started assimilating, trying to fit in by picking up things that I was observing, trying to make it. It's a survival instinct thing. So I was messaging people like, "Hey, mate," and I don't say mate. But I was saying it like it was common. I was walking out into like stores and stuff, and people were stopping me like, "Where the fuck are you from?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Here."
Yeah, we had I was married to a lovely girl from the UK. She's from the Isle of Man. And when we were married, we had a Canadian English dictionary on our fridge, because the very first time I came out, I was going to an audition and I said, "Do you know where my suspenders are?" She thought she was married to a cross-dresser, because in the UK, suspenders are what hold up your garters, or kind of, and I said, "Well, what do you call them?" She said, well, we call them braces. And I said, "Oh, no, those go in your teeth." And she goes, "Yeah, that too." And there's lots of, yeah, that too. Like the pavement, sidewalk is different. There's, garage and rubbish and all this stuff, all these things just that they have. The big one is aluminium, which
That sounds
where
like
it
witchcraft.
which is what you guys say is aluminum, right?
Oh my god, really?
Yeah.
What?
And the
That's like
reason
Australia rice.
no, no,
Rice.
the reason why they say aluminum in the US is a typo. The actual spelling of the word is aluminium, but there was a certain university who printed up thousands and thousands and thousands of textbooks, and they spelled it wrong.
America.
So rather than admit they'd spelled it wrong, they just taught it differently.
You're goddamn right we did. I
Yeah.
love that.
Well, there was a comedian who was on just a little while ago who was talking about how Americans can get really obstinate about certain things. And one of the things that they're very obstinate about is gas. Here in the UK, it's called petrol. Whereas in America, it's called gas. But we all know gas isn't a liquid, it's a gas. So but I think it comes from gasoline, right?
Mm.
But Americans have shortened that to gas, and it's just, I'm pumping gas. It's like, well, no, that's a liquid. That's not gas. You should call it something else. No, it's gas.
Oh my god.
So it goes in this sort of cycle where you go, but that's not a gas. Yeah, it's a gas. I'm pumping gas in my car. It's like, no, you're pumping a liquid. You need to call it something else, because it's not gas. But see, but then you get into semantics, which is why I love VO, because they're fun.
That's what
Words.
I'm a fan of it when it comes to I want to try and expand my capacity for the English language or any
Yeah.
language as much as possible by understanding more words. Like reading a dictionary and pulling out words like petrichor, boondoggle, all these types of things where someone could hear it and be like, I've never heard that one before. It's like it's because we're butchering the English language now. Most kids my age are butchering it. People that come over here from another country don't want to assimilate, and then they can get by with knowing a few words, but then it just slaughters the language. And it's the same thing. If I go to another country, I need to learn that language. I need to try my best to assimilate and try my best to fit in. And the whole idea of people need to change to fit our needs rather than us fitting theirs.
There's a very interesting conversation with this woman over here named Nick Redman, who is an accent coach, a voice coach, and I think I saw this link on her page where it was the amount of times that you're told that you're saying something wrong, when that's never the case. It's not you're saying it wrong, you're saying it how you say it from where you're from. So it's not wrong. You're not, unless it's a word that you're saying, you're mispronouncing it totally. But if you're just saying something with a different accent, it's not wrong. It's just the way you say it. And it's exactly what you just said, where you're saying, where they're talking about butchering the language and how why do I have to be like you and all that kind of stuff. That's the thing about voice, and what I was saying about like regional accents and stuff like that. Some people just say the word differently, and you should just let them say that word. You say the word one way, I say the word different way. It's either. It's all that kind of stuff, that things they've never
It's
decided
just so
on.
much easier when it flows out naturally. Like
Yeah.
I haven't seen my buddy. That probably yesterday was the first time we've actually hung out in like months. Just with the whole fact of like we just been working and trying our best
Yeah.
to find a sense of normalcy. So like we're at the store or whatever, and I'm like what are you talking about? And he goes, "What the fuck did you just say?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, why are you saying it like that? And I realized the past months I've been kind of listening to podcasts. I never listen to my own. I'm always listening to like somebody like my favorite comedians from Baltimore. And I'm
Yeah.
picking up so much of the stuff he's saying because my family's from there. So like I revert to this thing. It's like if you ever listen to a podcast where someone's talking to a person of color or something, and they start like getting really slangy, and it's like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? And it's like, are you gonna call that shit out? And it's like, oh my god, I did do that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you went. It's like your brain is like, because I've been a minority in every job I've ever worked in. So I worked at a hotel, the whole cleaning staff. I was the only white guy on there. So I was
Yeah.
picking up Spanish. I was picking up a bunch of things, and my words, it would come off. And if you're walking around in public and you're speaking like, hey man, like what, like you start talking like that, people are like, whoa, what are you doing? It's like, oh no, shit. I've been dealing at work every day.
You're just assimilating your environment. That's the cool thing. I mean, particularly, you mentioned doing like a walk-in, and if you're somebody who practices a lot of accents and things, those accents occasionally, when you're not paying attention, when your brain is just shutting off, those will creep right in, and you'll start sounding like a walk-in. Every time I've ever done a play where I had to do I did a play where I had to be from Maine. Basically like we're talking like Murder She Wrote stuff,
I
like
gotta hear it, dude. Come on.
oh no, what let's see if I could do it now. Because I used to the guy I get in my head is the deputy, and it was like, hey, Jessica, how you doing? It's good to see you. Good to see you over here. Yeah. Oh yeah, but I'd have to practice. But I started talking like that for a long time, and, and my wife was like, "Stop that! Just stop
Yeah,
that!"
when I get in
Just,
Christopher
yeah,
Walken mode, there are people that are like, "Can you stop? It's been 2 days," and I'm like, "I don't think I can." Like, there's just this mentality. Like, once you start working on it, it becomes this thing. It takes over.
it happens. It's how many people do we know where you've got some, or maybe someone has said it to you. It's like, "Hey, why don't you smile? What's wrong?" And you're like, "Nothing. I'm okay." What's that? Well, you're not smiling. I go, "Well, this is my face. This is my relaxed face. My
You look
relaxed face,
tired.
my relaxed face is maybe a little angry, or maybe it's a tired face, but I don't have to be smiling all the time, kind of thing." And so I love that one. It's like, how come you're not smiling? Do I have to smile all the time?
That's like that. I get that when I also like, because like I said, Baltimore accent. It does involve a lot of curse words, but I don't hold curse words as stigmatized as a lot of people do. And then whenever I drop one, like, oh shit, someone's like, "Are you angry? Are you angry?" I'm like, "No, you're angering me," and it's like you just snap.
It's a lot of it depends on your environment as well. Like I was working in a place back in Canada, and where everybody swore so much. Like it was just the vernacular. That's what it was swearing. And so I would go out and with my friends or what, and I swore a lot. And they were like, you're an angry man. And I'm like, why? Because you swear so much. I go, oh, am I? And I wasn't even aware I was doing it. And it's just because it becomes such a part of your language that the words you're using don't mean what they mean to other people. That's one of the fascinating things I've always loved about languages, is what where certain words have changed so much where they don't mean what they did. And so when someone uses a certain word, you kind of go, ooh, where other people are like, what's the big deal? It's when you look at words, two words that I've always been fascinated by are the occult is one word, because occult originally just meant something not taught at university.
Yeah, and
That's
now
all.
it's
That's
like
all.
dark magic shit.
Exactly, because eventually it became something not taught at university, was something that wasn't regulated, which meant, and they referred to it meant things like astrology, which came on to take like witchcraft and stuff. But originally it was just astrology. Astronomy wasn't originally taught. It was an occult science. And the other word is vulgar, which I've always liked. Vulgar just means common.
Vulgar means like rude.
Originally it just meant common, just meant every day. And it
What
was used.
words are going to change next, man? I
Oh
don't
no,
want
see,
to.
no, that's all I meant. So if somebody says, "Oh, how vulgar," vulgar at the time just meant how everyday, how common. You know, you're a little common person, and I'm not. So you're vulgar. And now, now it means rude, because it came on to take such a connotation that a commoner was considered to be, oh, get out of my presence. You're a commoner, and I'm not.
I
That's
work I work
that's where
with
that
this
came from, man.
Romanian kid, and this Romanian kid goes, he's smoking a cigarette. He goes, "Your language is bullshit." And I said, "What's wrong with our language?" He goes, "You have words that mean multiple things." And I say, "What do you like? What words mean multiple things?" And he gives me like a list of like things. Or like you say, like people say, "Dick, dick." It means it could be rude or it could mean your penis. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to teach my kid and he's running around the house saying my penis, I'd rather him say my cock because it sounds manlier. And like he goes, "This is what I mean. You say one word and it means something completely different." So when I have a conversation with someone that's not you, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I'm like, I don't know.
I
It's like a vibe you got to catch.
Oh, the English language is, I admit, flat out, is horrible. Absolutely horrible. It's one of the worst languages in the world to teach, because it's the language with an exception to every rule. Every rule. And then we have stupid shit like like synonyms and homonyms,
The
antonyms.
worst
Like,
is when you get into the thing where they're like fear, false evidence appearing real. And you're like, don't do this.
well, not even that. I mean, when you have words like there, and there, read, which is also read,
Yeah.
which is, and you're like, but red is R-E-D. Yeah, but it's also R-E-A-D, but that's read as well. And tread, but it's not treed. You never say, so if I have tread, if I can say read and read, why can't I say treed and tread? Well, because you just can't. It's English.
It's
And you're
like
like,
the C makes a cuss sound, and then a K also makes a cuss sound. You're like, hold on, C is
yeah,
already doing that job. And they're like, no,
except,
no, no, depending on
yeah,
where it is in the sentence.
because then you have a word like receive, where the C isn't doing that job. It sounds like an S.
Oh my God, thank God I learned this early. I
So
was,
yeah, so you go out. So when this guy, see, but the English, the one thing that makes English really fun, but also a bugger, is we do something in English called coinage, which means coinage that just came from making a coin. So you're minting a coin. You're making something new. Coinage means taking a word from another language and just popping it into English, which we do all the time. So there are words that we use, like deja vu. It's not English, but we use it. It's become part of the English language. It's French, but we just, rather than change the spelling or anything like that, we just kind of pop it in. But one of the things that they also do in English is we add things to the end of words like ish. When you coming over? I don't know, two-ish. That buggers up foreigners completely, because they go, what? What is this ish thing? Like, how many minutes is an ish? No, it's
you just gave me
you
the
know.
worst memory flashbacks. When I was learning
You're
times,
welcome.
my dad was like, "I'll be there 1:45." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, "It's like 45 minutes, like, 1:45." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you just say the time? Why are you doing these games 1:45, a hair past a freckle? I'm fucking lost and I'm 8 years old. I want to know when you're picking me up from my birthday party."
Exactly, because a quarter to two, well, really, because an hour is divided up into quarters, which are four. But for me, a quarter was 25. It's 25 cents. So if somebody said a quarter to two, I would go, what, 20, 25 minutes to two? And you're like, no. And it's that whole thing where you go, why don't you just say the time? I remember when somebody said, we're going to teach you metric time. because growing up in Canada, and I'm like, metric time? I had enough problems with regular time. What do you mean metric time? Metric time is just a military clock. It's just a 24-hour clock.
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
difficult. I have people message me like, "Hey, we're still on for 17 hours." I'm like, "Fuck, let me calculate that one in my head and I'll get back to you."
I hate it. There's something about the hours between 16 and 19 where I have to go. Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Okay,
Because you got
that's
to
good.
remember the 12 to get to the
I can
1.
I can get the 15. I don't know why, but the 16, I go, oh, 4 o'clock. I don't know why it's 4 o'clock.
I
And then
shouldn't have to do the Pythagorean theorem to figure out what time zone you're in.
exactly. That's, yeah, that's the thing. That's the
What do you think language is going to be like in the future, though? Because as I've been saying, is like our emojis are now like our modern day hieroglyphic. No way. Hold on a second. I'm saying that word properly. Hieroglyphics.
fix.
Hieroglyphics.
There you go.
Ah,
Language is changing. I mean, you've got, originally in the 70s, like when I was a youth, although I just, but like growing up, like 10, 11, the language of commerce was French, which is why a lot of places were bringing in metric kind of thing. And, so over in the EU, the European Union, all that stuff, if you wanted to do business with other countries, you learned to speak French. That was sort of the generic language. And then sort of China got involved with a lot of stuff. And then America kind of went, here we are. If you want to deal with us, you got to speak. It's funny. You'll say you got to speak English, not American. You got to speak English, which is really funny because not a lot of Americans actually speak English.
yeah.
So,
It's
I
like
mean,
it's what would you call it? It's like the $5 bin at Walmart. It's like you're just grabbing at like the leftovers.
that's the thing. And so that's the fun part about the language. So to answer your question, English is going to become quite dominant, I think. There's English and Chinese as well, but a lot of people already are just the top. Like there are people in Scandinavian countries who can speak better English than I can because they're taught it in school, they learn it in school. There's a lot of the Asian countries, they speak, they teach them in English, which I think is a really sad thing for me anyway. For example, coming from Canada, I'm not bilingual. I just speak English. Whereas a lot of people would go, well, don't you speak French? I go, no,
Depending on
I
where
didn't
you're at,
have to.
like Montreal's French, right?
Yeah, I didn't have to. So what happens, particularly when you live in a superpower, is you don't really, that's not something that you need because other people are going to conform to you. And I think we really miss out on the opportunities of when you learn another language, you also learn why they do certain things. You learn why they speak why their songs are certain ways, why they're, why bedtime stories are there certain, why ghost stories are different, because their language is different. They tell different things. I remember this girl from Germany was telling me this joke and she stopped halfway through and she said, I can't finish my joke. And I said, why? And she goes, because there's nothing in English that translate to what I'm trying to tell you and you won't get it. And that was sad. I kind of went, oh, this sounds like a great joke kind of thing. And I think we're going to start missing out on some of the culture stuff. I know there's because of the internet and because of things like lockdown, because when you're trying to get everyone talking, you can't subtitle everything. So even me being, doing voiceover stuff, I'm lucky that I get to speak English kind of thing and do some of the things I do. But I think we're going to miss out on, because some countries are going to start losing identities because they're going to become like other countries kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that'll be kind of sad, but it's, at the same time, there's some languages where it's like, like holy crap.
There's some where it's like really confused. When I was learning, like, because what I would do at my work, we had Romanians and Bulgarians that would come over on like a student visa, and I'd be like, write down 10 words on a piece of paper every day. I'm going to ask you for 10 words, and I would ask everyone to write down whatever they want. So you
Oh,
knew the
fantastic.
people. Well, you would know the people who were the ones that would treat it right. Most of the
Yeah.
women from Romania would actually give you the correct words. But then there was the one dude we had in the laundry room that would give you all the dirty shit that you don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
say to anybody. So then you're getting messed up. But my one buddy, my close friend I was telling you about this, said that, yeah, you never understand what you Americans are saying. Because just from me talking, comparing to talking to somebody else, and he wrote down these words and he said fire on the piece of paper, but it's spelled foot, like F-U with like a little apostrophe above it and then a T. And I'm like, so how do you say that? And he goes, foot, foot. I'm like, that means something different here. That's your foot on your foot. He goes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's another meaning for another word. And I'm like, you just gave me shit about doing that. Now you're doing it.
I was just when I was over here, I was working in a warehouse for a while. It was the largest warehouse, fresh food warehouse in the UK, or actually in Europe. And in this warehouse, they represented over 49 different countries. So walking out on the floor on some days was just like, holy, like nobody was speaking
I am
English,
in the
nothing.
United
and
Nations.
and oh yeah, but it was awesome, as well, because you're just like, there's just so much, so many different languages, holy crap, and to have them all in one place is actually really cool. Like the UK is actually really interesting for that kind of thing. There's something about the way that people are brought up here. Like one of the questions you get asked here right away is not like in North America. One of the first three questions is almost, what do you do? Over here, it's, where are you from? Because that's more important than what do you do. It's, where are you from? They want to see. And there are people here who can tell where you're from within 100 yards by the way you speak. Like they'll listen and they'll go, oh, I know where that is. That's a village up, blah, blah. And you're like, how the heck? And there's got to be over 50 different, 60, 70 different dialects here in the UK alone, just different accents. So that's why I had to revisit all the accents that there are in Canada and the US, because there's a bunch.
You should be
I
playing
mean,
a game with that. You should try and assimilate into each group, like just walk down the street and then try to talk like them and see how
well,
and see
yeah,
what you
because
recognize.
not only do you get you get the different, the Cockneys and the whatevers, because back in the day people didn't travel that much, so you had little insular little villages and over here you'll get like an audition breakdown will come in and they'll go looking for a guy in his 40s from this particular village in Norfolk, and you go, what? So you Google it, this village, population 307, and you're like, how is anybody going to even know that I'm from? But the thing is, they do know. And that's the weird thing about here. So they're like, accents are really important because they can really ding where you're from. And people will make immediate judgments about you here by the way you speak. Whereas they kind of do that in the US, like you said, like when they talk about, I'm from the South, immediately when I think about the South, if it wasn't for Matlock, who kind of changed a lot of stuff, where he's a Southern lawyer. But my first thought when I think of the South is not lawyer.
Yeah,
it's,
it's
it's,
cowboy.
us- it's usually deliverance, you know. So which is kind of bad,
Uh,
but which is bad. That's a stereotype. That's a total stereotype. I mean, like, you got the guys in the, when you think about, LA or whatever, it's like, dude, how are you? Tubular, it's like,
brah!
brah, oh, I was watching a video the other day with a bunch of guys going, brah, bruh, what, bruh? That's gotta stop. That's a horrible thing.
It's like one of the classic stoners, like, yeah, man, getting down and busy, bro.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of stuff that's changing. Like, I love the way that the youth of today and the youth of yesterday, how we all had our words, that when everybody has their thing that they used to communicate so that their parents wouldn't understand what they were saying.
On
What?
fleek, bro.
Yeah. And what's actually happening? It's like, hey, man, I'm hip to your fly talk, cherry tomato. It's like, I have no idea. I have no idea what it's like.
I think those are heirlooms.
Exactly. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff where people, it's the stuff you use so that your parents don't know what you're talking about is sort of why you come up with those words. But they're actually kind of cool. But you got the Instagram influencers and stuff like that who are giving kids. Now the problem that you have with a lot of that is influencers influence lots of different age groups. So you'll have what used to be sort of a 10 to 15-year-old, these are the people who use these words, are now being used by 10 to 35-year-olds who are all sort of using this sort of thing. And words that used to be quite innocent or whatever aren't that innocent anymore, because when you have 35-year-olds using the words, they can mean something different than when an
My
11-year-old
my
using it.
grandfather was teaching my little nephew. They were like, I guess my little nephew saw a Snapchat story because he's 8 years old and has a phone. That's an issue.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
He pulls out Snapchat and it's like learning languages or parents learning languages. So I came home and I was like singing and playing blocks and I was like, "What's going on?" And my grandpa was like, "Is my outfit on fleek?" I'm like, "Fleek? What? How do you know that? I barely know that word." And they had sat there for an hour and a half before I arrived and just were learning the new language of the world that we're growing up in, where I was hearing them talk. I'm like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like, "How out of it am I? I'm the old ass here."
The one of the things I've really learned is, like, I'm in my 50s, but one of the things I've really learned is my wife and I never had kids, so I never got into that uh learning learning Snapchat or Vine or Instagram, because you got to keep up with your kids. You got to see who are your kids talking to, what are they doing, like you don't want to you don't want to say policing them, but it's you had to learn the all the little the emotes and all that stuff before emojis came out, when people were just typing in, and all the shorthand that goes in, and you're like, holy crap, what is that? Or somebody will type in something that's like 9 letters long and it means this whole thing. And what's happening though is grandparents are sitting down with their grandkids and going, teach me Instagram. Whereas the parents are too busy because they're working and doing whatever. So the grandparents are learning all the hip for shizzle fly stuff. And the parents are going, what? Mom, what did you just say? It's like,
Yeah,
never
my
mind.
grandmom taught me raffle, which means rolling on floor laughing. I was like, "What the fuck are you saying to me? Am I not? Are you auto corrected into something?" Like my phone does that to me too. It really sucks. I'll say the word like I'll say the F word and it'll say duck, and then I sent it and I'm like, that just lost all impact of what I
Yeah.
was saying.
Yeah. Can you hang on for just a second? Somebody just popped at my door. Amazon delivery. So
What'd you order from Amazon?
uh a set of gaming headphones.
That is
So
not a bad decision. I'm
no,
using these. I
because
actually just got these from Five Below, and before our meet, I pulled and it yanked way too hard, and it probably ripped out my eardrum, I'm afraid.
yeah, this is what I did. I got myself a set of I've got kind of hooked on their wireless gaming headphones, which means I can get up and get myself a coffee or something like that, or wobbly pop, if if it's that time of the day or night kind of thing.
What the hell is a wobbly pop?
A wobbly pop is what we would you'd it's what Canadians call beer, but a lot of people over here will refer to it as like the alcoholic, where you get like
Wait,
what the
you call
like a
alcoholics
cooler,
I was about to say you
a
call
cooler.
alcoholics wobbly pops? That makes sense.
No,
They
no, no,
wobble.
beer, a beer. If I'm getting a beer, I'll go, hey, can you grab a couple wobbly pops from the fridge? So that's all that.
Where are we at? Pee-wee's
And you would
Playhouse?
no, and you would say wobbly. That's from, geez, where the heck's that from? But you would say that because in Canada, for example, you couldn't drink on television. You couldn't do the stuff. So if you're referring to alcohol, or if you're trying to be clever and not let the kids know that you're drinking, you have all these, like, it's like Canadians have, like, it's like, I'll have a barley sandwich, please, which is a beer.
Kids
So
are just like dogs. You just spell out the word outside and then the dog doesn't know.
exactly. B-E-E-R. It's like, do you want a beer, Dad? Yes, please. Thank you. It's that type of thing. So it's that whole thing where, oops, my phone. So wow, I can't remember what we were talking about. But I mean, language is so much fun, and it's why I love doing VO. Like I was an actor for 25 years, and I treated voiceover more as a hobby. And once I got divorced and once COVID kicked in, I found I wasn't enjoying acting as much anymore, but I loved voiceover. I love telling stories. I love being a storyteller. And like Mysteries of the Abandoned is one of the shows that I narrate back in the US. I love the stories that come out there, all this, and I love the way that I love learning new stories from other people as well. So in whatever language you're going to tell them in, but I just love hearing people tell stories. I think everyone's a storyteller, really.
It's
And
it's experiences. You just got to find out, like, people that, like, you can consider yourself a storyteller, but sometimes some of the best stories are things you don't even think are stories.
No, it's what happened to you that day, that morning. Some little uh like the average play, for example, is like, and I'm saying the average play is usually a snapshot of a time. Like it's usually real time, like, so because it's not like a movie, so there's not a lot of cuts and edits. So you've taken these 2 hours out of the characters' lives and you're showing them to people on the stage, kind of thing. And there's so much stuff like that happens like that all the time. Like people, like something will just happen just down the street and you go, this thing just happened. And some people can tell, like my dad could not tell a story at all. Like he just he'd start to tell this, he'd forget the word, and then he'd go, oh no, wait a second, no, that didn't, that no, no, this other thing happened first. Yeah, that, then this, and then he starts laughing at his own jokes, and you're like, you're like, you want to write it down on a piece of paper? He's like, no, and then it's, oh no, it was really funny. I guess you had to be there. That was his, I guess you had to be there was almost a catchphrase, because you kind of went, yeah, I guess I did.
A lot of the times it's hard to explain something that happened that's like, it was funny in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because if you don't get context, and that's the other thing about language is, I mean, there was a show, this is going to sound really geeky, but there was a Star Trek Next Generation episode that came out that was called Point of View. And in this episode, Riker gets accused of murder and he gets put on trial, and they make Data the judge, and they bring up a series of witnesses who tell their stories, and each one tells a totally different story about what happened. And Data listens to all the stories and he says, each of the witnesses are telling the truth. And as audience members, you go,
Because you
what are you
believed
talking?
it. You fooled
No,
yourself into believing it.
no, you're telling the story from your perspective, from your point of view. So from these 5 different people, this is what happened in their head. One of them, one of the witnesses was talking about the person who got killed in this sort of like he was a hero and he was saving the world and all this, because she was in love with him. So she was, but he was already married to somebody else. And then you had one who was telling a story about like another person gets up and is like, yeah, Riker was hitting on me and all this stuff. And then Riker was saying, no, she was flirting with me. I wasn't hitting on her. And so because they were looking at the same story from different perspectives, different point of view. And that changed my way of thinking and way of looking at life so totally, because now
Welcome to my show. That's like my shtick.
And that's what it is, where you walk in and you go, now my brain is so open-minded, my brain leaks out in a way, but because now it's, everyone has their own thing, and everyone, like, just because someone is, they're like, no, I come to the realization that it's like, I don't think there's a solid, this is what happened, this is the thing. And even our memories are clouded. Like if we think back, there was in 1983, I was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks for ice hockey. In fact, well, it's what they call it here.
I wish
hockey.
I could show you the flag that I'm staring at right now.
So in 83, I was drafted by the Blackhawks. 2 weeks after I was drafted, I was in an accident, wrecked my back and my knee, my neck, So I ended up never playing. Didn't even get a jersey, kind of thing. And I eventually hit a point in my life where I had convinced myself that it had never actually happened. So I had to go to somebody and say, would you mind checking the files just to see if that, and this would have been like 15 years later, kind of thing. And he was a sports writer. Uh, my my wife at the time said, you talk to this guy. He knows what's going on. And so this guy said, he looked it up. He goes, yeah, here it is. 9th round. You were a 9th round draft pick in 1983. And I was like, okay. And he said, why? And I said, I just needed to believe again because I'd convinced myself it had never happened.
That's what's so complicated about the human mind and why I find it so fascinating is because there's this thing called foreign accent syndrome. Have you ever heard of that?
No, that sounds really cool though.
You need to look it up, especially if you're a your voiceover artist. These people hit their head and their accent completely changes. A woman from the UK who has never been to Japan, has never even really talked to anybody from Japan, had gotten to a terrible car accident. She woke up in the hospital and she was still speaking English, but with an Asian accent. And it was on the news. They had to go through all these tests to see if it was bullshit, but it's happened like 6 times. Like throughout the whole entire world, it's happened to like 6 times to 6 different people. Their accent, they just hit their head. Next thing you know, they start speaking in a different language.
That actually sounds really cool. And it actually probably sounds like a memory issue. Like they probably heard it. They probably heard so many people speaking with a language or with an accent.
It's like how
And
the
then,
babies have the soft spot on their head that's like a
yeah.
reset if you drop them. That's like that's what the foreign accent syndrome is. Your
Oops,
brain tries to
I'm not
like
laughing. I'm not laughing.
but like
Yes.
if you watch the interview with the woman, you're sitting there like, all right, what's the accent? She goes, I have not speak my language for 12 years now. And you're like, is that fake? And you start realizing, no, it's actually like they scanned her brain. The part where the language, I guess, or the memory gets stored into our brain, like there's reading and then there's like math and
Yeah.
stuff on different sides. Her memory cortex was like, it's swollen. So it was activating something that she had heard in the past.
They say that they're like, you'll have the children of immigrants, and say you're in and a lot of it happens over here. Like you'll have people who come over from, like, Pakistan or something, or even, Bahamas, or even the US, and they come over here and they have kids, and their kids are speaking with accents, what they would refer, and, you know, and not speaking what they're speaking. They, the uh, clinicians, I guess, or doctors, whatever, believe that you lock in your accent somewhere between 12 and 15. So
That would
after you're
explain it. I hung around my
after
dad a
you're
lot.
after you're 15, that's pretty much the accent you're going to use. It's not going to be like that all the time because, as I said, things can change. The words you use change. This changes. And I know over here, like I had somebody come up to me the other day and say, "Where in Ireland are you from?" And I looked at them and I went, "I'm I'm speaking here. Does this sound Irish at all?" And they went, "Yeah, it does." And I went, "What?" But to them, because of some of the words I was using and the way first I thought it was a joke. I've had 6 or 7 different people ask me that since I've been over here, where in Ireland I'm from, and that's where you kind of go, something has obviously changed, where when you're doing things. So, um, I get asked to be American a lot, kind of thing, but there you go. It's the sort of the RP thing to receive, where in America, I don't know, kind of thing. It's Midwest, something, I don't, whatever it is. But everybody has their own way. Like you've got sort of an accent. There are people who try really hard to lose their accent,
And then
which
there's the
is,
people that really try and enhance it. Like you could tell some people glory it up a little bit.
oh yeah, this because the, it's particularly, well, you wonder, like, um you have movies like where they talk about where there's the Bronx, or the movies like the Untouchables, where they really push that sort of the Chicago aspect of it, kind of thing.
Chicago.
Yeah, and where you get, and the Boston, when you get into, Good Will Hunting, where they really push the you know my ma's cat pack and all that kind of stuff, where they get in there. And it's again, I'd love to go through the U.S. and just look at all the different, even the South, even there's the Kentuckys and the Carolinas have different accents, and the Virginia, you got a different accent. There's a different accent between Georgia and Florida. And there's almost not quite as many accents as there are in the UK, but whenever you have people that are regions that are sort of separated, like you get the Blue Hills of Kentucky, you're going to have different regional things are going to happen. Mississippi and Missouri, that whole area's got their own little thing happening. What happened in Louisiana, kind of New Orleans, holy crap, like what happened there? The Cajuns, where'd that come from, kind of thing, and well, I have an idea where it came from, but that's so different from the rest of the US that and then you have Texas, there's about 5, 6, 7 different Texas accents, and then that's cool to me. I just love that kind of stuff. I love finding out about that stuff.
If you could pick one that you've either worked on practicing because you love it so much, or if you could pick one that you wish you had, which would it be?
I wish there are some accents over here. I just love them to death. The Irish accent is really cool, but the Scottish, there are certain Scottish accents that are they need subtitles. I'd love to have an accent like that. Like if you're from Glasgow, or how an American would say yes if they're having a tour of the United Kingdom, where they'd be like, I'm going into Yorkshire and over off into Lancashire and then off into Scotland and over into Ireland, and we're going to have a blast. But there are certain languages, accents actually in Ireland, in Scotland, where I listen to them and I go, what did that guy just say?
There's a dude from Scotland that he was an older man, but he only had a couple of teeth. But when he talked, he sounded drunk, and people were replaying it, like, what is he saying? What is he saying? I'm like, he said he's about to go to a beer with his mates when he gets done. People are like, how do you understand that? I'm like, I'm just really good at understanding language when it comes down to it.
You'll have some guys, you look at, there was an American comedian by the name of Foster Brooks, I think that was his name, who specialized in doing drunk. And when he talked, you get a lot of accents, and that's just a big, I don't want to talk to that all the time, but that was his stick during the 70s. He drunk talk, kind of thing. He had it was this whole thing that he did. And I think, to answer your question, I think I would like to have a good, solid Glaswegian accent that no one can understand what I was talking about.
With the bumps and the whips and the whoops and that's
because I need to have I'd carry around little subtitles.
I would love the accent of an Irish one, because every time I hear an Irish accent, I just melt in my seat. I don't know what it is about the language. I hope one day to find an Irish girl. It's just this aspect of it just sounds so good to me. Like I worked with.
Yeah, there are some ones. Don't go watch the new Mountain Time movie, because
I'm not watching Walking.
No. But I mean, because even Emily Blunt, who's really a good actress, from what I understand, just like the Irish accent. The problem with Hollywood came out with this thing where they Hollywooded up, like Hollywood. They call it Hollywood German. And the funny thing about Hollywood German was everyone sounded English. Or they sounded British. That was Hollywood German. Because if you notice, all the bad guys who were German all had British accents, and he kind of went, okay.
Hey, we're trying over here.
Yeah, and then you had all the bad guys from Star Wars. Yeah, they were all British, kind of thing. But then you had Hollywood Irish, and everyone sounded like they were in an Irish Spring ad.
Yeah,
and it was like, pass me my beer over there, lad. Oh, thank you so much.
Top of the morning to you.
Yeah, top of the morning, and hand me my shillelagh so I could pop you in the top of the head. Sean Roxy.
I used to work with a couple Irish people, and they used to have this. They have this amazing accent. It's like this thing where I was hanging around them so much, with working with them with the summer, and the next thing I know, I was picking up on their thing, and they were like, "Why are you taking my accent?" I was like, I don't mean to. But it's like weird. It's offensive if you're in this country and you pick up somebody else's accent when they're trying so hard to assimilate to yours.
It can be considered it sometimes, though, as you said, because you're a listener, and because you do this so much, and you said that when you listen to other people, you just start to pick up their, and that happens, and that's from somebody who is, because you like it so much and you're listening to it, and you start imitating it because you want to do the accent, you want to get it right. And occasionally you'll have someone going, don't do that.
Yeah.
and then you'll have someone go, you're not saying it right, lad. Don't do that like that.
You're
Because
butchering me language.
yeah, because there's even, there's different types of Irish. There's, as that you would go and do the things there, like Belfast has its own language. Northern Ireland's got its different than Southern Ireland, and so it's fantastic. It's love. Even Scotland, there's lots of, so many. That's one of the cool things about living over here in the UK, is there's so many different accents. I thought actually that I would be asked to do more accents when I got here, and it turns out they just want me to be me.
Because you have such a explosive personality.
Thank
I know I'm that's being dead
you.
serious. There's sometimes
Thank
you
you.
can sense with people, and you can notice it too. I had someone give me probably the best compliment I've ever heard, and I usually just like don't give me compliments, but he said that it's crazy how I can match an energy. And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You have some audience members that or guests that come on where it's like really slow, and you match it. You try and keep with the conversation and keep this
Yeah.
flow going. Then you have someone that comes on with super high energy, like yourself, which is a booming personality. It makes you want to get up and be like, holy shit, we're in it.
Let's do this. That's
Yeah.
right. And the other thing is COVID, man. I've been so alone. So I can talk to someone. So I'll talk to you.
I think voice actors, people that are voice actors now, were people back in the day that probably prank called a lot and just did funny voices.
They were the thing about voice actors as well back in the day, like things have, and as I was saying, because now they want to hear more your own voice. And voice actors back in the day used to get asked to do more voices, but going to a party with voice actors is like going to a party with comedians. It can be very, very tiring, because there are certain individuals who don't turn off. They're just on all the time. And like there were two people in particular that I knew back in Canada. You go to parties with them, and to this day I don't know what they sound like, their normal voice. I have no idea, because they were always on, always doing something, always, always, always. And comedians always telling jokes, always, and you're like, that's really funny. You can turn it off now, man. You don't have to be funny. Just be
My
you.
parents are radio personalities. So my dad, when he first started, he adopted radio voice, and I've never actually heard my dad talk normally. Like it's always radio. He did radio for 40 something years, and then now he owns his
Yeah.
own station. So that's way before I was born. So like people are like, "That's not how your dad sounds." I'm like, "That's
Well,
all I know, though. That's the only
exactly.
voice."
Exactly. You get, and they make spoofs of that. It's, where you have like radio voice guy, sitting down with breakfast with his family kind of thing. Good morning, family. How's everybody doing? Can you get me a cup of coffee over here? Thank you very much. Back after this. And you're like, okay, awesome.
Shit's real, dude. That
It
hits
is,
home with me. Where my dad's like,
but
"Somebody please pass the ketchup for my eggs." I'm like, "You want ketchup on your eggs, you savage."
yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, this is where it comes down to, in his environment, he spoke like that all the time, and he would come home, and when his brain shut off, it was still in that mode, because
Well,
and
shit, it's
particularly
something.
when it was AM,
Well,
and the difference between AM.
it's something that gives you or it pays the bills. So why would you stop doing it? You figure out it works and you just stick with it.
It becomes your identity as
Yeah.
well. And I'm lucky, although I do find myself on occasion narrating things, and they're like, just tell me, just talk kind of thing, and you have these, because you can slip into these modes. Everybody has these modes. And um the if you when you find something that's good, like the cool thing about your podcast is when there's so many different people and so many different topics and ideas, you can you you're not going to get you're not interviewing the same people all the time, so your point of view can change, and can you get you, or the amount of times that I bet you get, I didn't know that. you know, whereas if you're interviewing the same type of people all the time who tend to believe what you believe and fall into that sort of camp,
You
you
never
don't
change.
well, you don't really grow, kind of thing. Whereas I strongly believe, as you know, where I was talking about point of view, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I don't like you. You know, and a lot of people forget that that sort of frame of mind where it's like, no, I just don't agree with your, you know, maybe your political beliefs or whatever. Doesn't mean I don't like you. I think you're a great person. You just got shit ideas about politics, kind of thing. It's like, oh, you know, so it's that type of,
Are you
you know,
telling me you're not a Trumper, you son of a bitch?
so when you get into that whole well, you don't like me, why not? Well, because you disagreed with me at that party. It's like, no,
It's because
that's
every
not.
time I meet you, all we do is talk fucking sports.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like we get, you know, talk about something else. And that's the thing. So if you can get into an environment where you're constantly being bombarded by new shit all the time, that's just awesome. And so you got an awesome podcast, my friend. So
You've
thank you
made
very
it.
much for
You've made it
inviting.
awesome, Casper. That's what
Well, thank
happened.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on. This has been fun.
How
This
would
has
you
been fun.
wrap it if you're such a good narrator?
How would I wrap it? Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fantastic, fantastic episode. Out of the Blank, starring Rob and Casper. Thank you for listening.